Afternoon, guys. I am waiting on belts and all sorts of bits and bobs for my next repair jobs. So in the process of that, I picked up this Tascam a couple of weeks ago, and honestly, there wasn't much information about it. There wasn't many reviews, and there wasn't any run-throughs of its features. However, if you do a search of the best mini disc players ever invented, this is quite high on the list. So so you don't say that I'm a liar, this is a thread from Tapeheads that has been copied and pasted throughout the internet for about the past 10 years. And this thread is called Minidisc Decks Ranking List by Mr. Daniil. This is like 12 years old now, to be honest with you. But let's be honest, after this date, they're not making any more anyway. And he found it on eBay, blah, blah, blah. And obviously, ES, people love Sony ES stuff. The build quality is superb. But there you go, 96% right in the middle, Tascam MD-350, impressive sound quality, fair price. So this list that has been discussed and has been passed around the internet since the dawn of Minidisc puts this deck one below Sony ES's and above every single Minidisc player around. So, and I appreciate this is somebody's personal opinion, but you search for this list, it's on loads of forums. There's loads of all his friends saying, yeah, that's a really good list, well done for making it and whatever else. So don't just take it from Paul. I was surprised basically because I was looking for a mini disc player. I didn't want to go Sony. The Sony ES ones are like 300, 400, 500 quid, and they obviously top the list in a lot of places. But this was like, I read about 4 different lists, and it's very high on the lists. Now, I picked this up for, I think I paid 72 quid for it, which in the scheme of things gets you a pretty less than average Sony. So I was a bit skeptical, really. And it's amazing. I have absolutely no problems with it. I've had it about 2 weeks. I've fired loads of discs through it. I'll give it a bit of a cursory clean, and that's basically all I've done. Now, I don't often buy working equipment, but there wasn't many of these about. I think there's one on eBay at the moment, and it's something silly like 250 quid. But they do exist to get the bargains, and I think they're overlooked. So I'm going to go through it. I'm going to go through some of its features. I'm going to have a bit of a chat about it for anybody who's thinking of buying one. There's a couple of like demonstration videos on YouTube of somebody saying, "Oh, here's my new Tascam." So for those that don't know, Tascam is the professional arm of Teak, however you want to pronounce it. I've always said Teak. And this is a rack-mounted mini disc player for professional use. It's aimed towards the music professional for producing and recording music. I've got some of these Sorbothane feet here, which can be a bit of a pain sometimes because they do like to leave a bit of a residue, but it's on glass, so I'm not overly bothered, if I'm honest with you. It didn't come with any rack mounts on the side. This has been rack mounted in the past because of scratches on the top and on the sides. I'll probably just take the cover off, sand it down and spray it, and that's basically it. But it's got some really nice features, and it's got some really nice stuff going for it that a lot of mini disc players in its price bracket just can't even dream of. The build quality is exceptional. If you go inside this, it is like a tank. In comparison to the Sony ones I've had like the higher end Sony ones that aren't ES. So the next one down from ES, the code escapes me off the top of my head. I think it's like a 510 or a 610 or whatever. This absolutely blows it away on build quality. All right, it is a big, solid, chunky bit of kit. It's grey, which is some people don't like that. All the buttons are spot on. The feedback for the knobs and dials controls is great. This massive input level knob is very satisfying, and it just looks great. So yeah, I'll go for a couple of the features. Most of these are in the user manual. You can have a skip through if you're thinking about buying one. And we'll go from left to right. We'll do a little bit of a demo, put a disc in it, show you how the record monitor works. And my absolute favourite bit of this is we'll fire a keyboard in it. I had to find an old PS2 keyboard, and you can tap in the characters instead of flicking through this and pressing yes and all the rest of the stuff. So when you're recording, it's just really satisfying. We've got a nice clear display, nice clear screen. It's orange as opposed to Sony's blue. Over the side here, we've got something called pitch control, which is exactly what you think. If you turn it on, you can go in through the menus, and once you've been recording, you can edit the pitch on something. Standard recording timer playing off. We've got phones with its own separate volume knob, which again is something you don't often see. You've got MDLP, which gives you a long play for those of us that had VHS videos when we were kids. This gives you, instead of 74 minutes, I think it gives you double or 3 times what you can record onto for the mini disc. I wanted that, but in all honesty, I've not used it because I'm recording 1 album per disc, whatever, you know. So if that's something that you fancy, again, you know, like the first and second wave of Sony stuff, they don't all have that. And as I said, this can be picked up cheaper than the low to mid-range Sony players. All the buttons are really, you know, satisfying. They're all decent quality buttons and whatnot. And then over this side, we've got our pretty standard setup. This seems to be on all mini disc players. You search, record, edit, no, and yes. This is a twistable switch, a selector switch, and you can click it for OK as well. Stop playing ready. And then over here, we've got another couple of nice little features. You've got 2 digital ins for this. So that is, when I say digital in, that is, if I can get that cover off. I've never actually taken this cover off, so there could be nothing behind it. Yeah, there we go. So digital optical, as you can see. There's one on the front and one on the back, which obviously if it's rack mounted, I'm going to leave that off because I'm probably going to break it. In fact, I'm going to risk it. There we go. So obviously if it's in a rack, you don't want to go around the back and plug in a different input optically, and you can select between these 3 on the front, which is nice. And then in the corner, as I've said, we've got a PS2, the purple plug for the old style keyboards. I haven't tried it with a converter and a USB keyboard, but I have got a PS2 keyboard there that will fire in and do it from there. Chuck a mini disc in. This is a crystal gold JVC. The rest of the stuff is pretty straightforward. It'll read your table of contents. Nothing on this one, happy with that. And then it'll come up with a blank disc and whatever else. The rest of it, playback and everything else, very straightforward, very normal, nothing particularly unusual. You can skip through the tracks and whatnot if I were to record. Tells you how long's left on it, and you can flick through the display once you're recording. That is in monitor now, so if I had an input in, it would show you the levels, and then you can play about with this much as you would with a cassette deck and adjust your levels as you see fit. Once that's in standby, same as usual, press record and it'll record whatever you've got going into it, and then pressing record whilst it's recording will give you track separation, as you can see there. And you can create as many tracks as you want of whatever length. And then once you've got what you want to record, it'll generally write it. And with a lot of these things, it doesn't permanently write it until you press eject. So I press eject, it'll write it. And then once it's written, there's your written disc. Read the table of contents, and this should have what we've just recorded, 20 seconds, you know. And then there's your display of how long's left. So it does have a lot of features in the menus and whatever else. That's playing a little bit of Deep Purple in there. Obviously I can't actually show you the way it's playing Deep Purple because Deep Purple probably won't be too happy about it. Once you've got your levels there, obviously you can adjust them. It does say in the manual that if it's just touching the over, that's kind of where you want it. But I generally have it at 0 when I'm recording. It's got a real nice refresh rate on the levels there as well. It's nice and fast, and it's long as well, which I also like. Some of them have little teeny tiny levels, and it's really difficult to get your levels how you want them. But in all honesty, if I press record, press play while that's doing that now, that's me recording a new track from my source there, and you can adjust the levels on the fly as you're going through whatever. But generally, it's something that you'll set up before you start. We mentioned pitch control at the start there as to whether you want it off and on. That's done when you're in the base menu of the disc. It asks you if you want to touch about with the pitch, press yes, and then you can adjust that by percentage, up and down, however you see fit. Whether that's on Sony stuff, I don't know, but I honestly haven't seen that on anything else. So that's nice, I'm happy with that. The next snazzy feature that I want to go through, which it's kind of snazzy, but it's also a bit useless depending on what you're recording off. So if you're recording off, say, Spotify, or even off a CD, I find that the gap between tracks on most things is 2 seconds. So this is set up where when you're recording, it'll split the tracks for you if there's a gap of silence of 4 seconds. It hasn't ever split a track for me yet because nothing has got 4 seconds of silence in it. But I'll show you how to do that. So you press record. We're in monitor there now at the moment, so I'll just turn that down a bit. And then once you're in monitor, you go to edit. You've got your different record modes there as well. And then auto tracking is on. Now I've had it on since I've started using it. I've recorded loads of stuff and it's not split one track. But that's because it's set up to do it every 4 seconds. And that is just a case of wiggling left and right whether you want it on. Set your title while you're recording, which is cool. And then your record mode again is short play, long play 2, 4, mono. And that's where you set that. You can set that whilst you're in monitor as well. Whilst you're recording, you can go and edit the track individually. You can edit the disc title whilst it's doing its recording thing. I presume it doesn't write it at the same time. Maybe it's in a buffer, and then when you press eject, it fires it from the buffer onto the disc. Otherwise, I mean, it's recording two things at once. So that's the main features of it. Let's fire this PS2 keyboard in and have a bit of fun with that. So your PS2 keyboard just goes in the side here, which is keyed. It's flat on one corner. It's not as obvious as what you might think to control the deck. You can control the entire deck through a keyboard. You can play, fast forward, rewind. Every single button that's on the front here can be done through the keyboard. However, the instructions for how to do that are in the manual, page 21 off the top of my head. I've just read it recently. And not all of them are useful really, because when you're recording, the only things that are going to be useful are going to be track splitting, next track, previous track, and edit title. I think that's basically all I've got. So me being a bit of a throbber, I've basically put that on a bit of paper on my keyboard. Shift and F8 edits the title, plays F5, stops F4, next track F2, previous track F1. Yes is obviously enter, which makes sense. You can eject it with Shift and F12, and then cancel is escape. So if I do Shift and F12 now, that will actually eject the disc. Now, maybe I'm just easily impressed, but I don't know why I think that's cool. I suppose it's just a remote control, really, at the end of the day. But you have the ability to edit your tracks as well. Alright, so that's us on our... We've got our selection there. It's actually on the base of the disc. So if I press F2, it'll take me to the first track. And then if I want to name that, I've got this written as Shift and F8. So Shift and F8. Which title do you want to edit? Title 1, enter. And then you can put whatever you want in there. You can put the conga. So let's say that track's the conga. And that's it. Now, as I said, Paul's probably easily impressed here, but I love this. I didn't realise you could get mini disc players that did this. And here's me playing about with my Sonys and messing about with this for 20 minutes every time I record something. And you don't need to. So if I go to the next track, Shift and F8, you can choose with the arrow keys what you want to choose, what you want to edit. The disc title as well. So let's say the disc title as being Black Lace. This isn't Black Lace, by the way, but who doesn't like Black Lace? So if I go to eject, Shift and F12, let it write what it wants to do. Now when I stick this back in, hopefully it'll say my favourite Black Lace. Hey! Pretty cool. So this is feeling like one of them book reviews you do at primary school after you come back off half-term holidays. How many stars would I give it? I don't know, really. I've had experience of plenty of mini disc decks. I've repaired them, I've messed about with them and whatnot. There is loads of people complaining of faults on Sony decks. The ones that aren't ES, the lower ones from ES. And there's not many people, there's not many posts or questions asking about how do I repair this Tascam that I bought. Which leads me to believe that, you know, perhaps a pretty decent build quality. There isn't many about that are faulty. There isn't many about for sale in general, to be honest with you. But it's definitely something that I would recommend picking up if you find one. If you're looking for a decent quality mini disc player and it's something that you want a couple of nice features and you want to show off to your friends that you can control a mini disc player with a keyboard. Let's be honest, below a certain age they aren't going to be impressed by that, but I'm pretty impressed by it. So if you are, then this is maybe something you want to consider getting for your rack, or to replace a cassette deck or something like that, and move up in the world. We fire through history in the space of 2 weeks, from cassettes through to mini discs through to, I don't know, maybe we'll get an iPod next. I would definitely recommend getting one. Plenty of websites, strangely enough, would recommend getting one, as I've shown you in the screenshots there. And it makes superb recordings. I have no fault with it, and I won't be getting rid of this. I'll be keeping this, I think, until it dies, and then I'll probably replace it with another one. So if you've enjoyed this, great. Thanks to Tascam for making this. If I haven't mentioned, this is a MD-350. I believe there's maybe a 301 or a 310 or something like that. I don't know. But thanks for watching. Little interim video while I wait for belts for this. What am I doing at the moment? Bang & Olufsen cassette deck. And I'm also waiting for caps for a phono stage for a Marantz amp as well. So I'm basically just waiting on the postman, which is frustrating. But have a great day. If you like my videos and this has helped you, maybe you should subscribe. I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm a pretty cool guy, and I like to produce a video roughly about every 2 weeks, just on depending on what I'm doing. So have yourselves a great April. Hope you've had a good Easter, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.